Listen to me. So many of us wake up every morning fighting a shadow, a thought, a feeling, something that looks big but has no real weight. We call it fear. We let it whisper in our ears, drain our courage, and slow our steps. But today, I want you to look that thing in the face and say, you don't own me. Because fear is not the giant you think it is. Fear is an illusion that grows only when you feed it. Family, if you could see how much strength you already carry, fear wouldn't scare you the way it does. Most of the time, we're not fighting danger. We're fighting imagination. Fear paints pictures in our minds that feel real, but they are built on what, if not truth? I'm here to tell you fear is not your enemy. Fear is a signal. Fear is a doorway. Fear is a chance to rise higher than you ever believed you could. When you learn to walk through it, instead of running from it, everything in your life begins to shift. Today, I want to help you see fear for what it really is. And more importantly, I want you to see YOU for who you really are. Fear has a way of stretching shadows across your path until everything looks larger than it truly is. It doesn't need facts or evidence. It works through imagination. It whispers worst case scenarios and paints them as if they're guaranteed. A small challenge becomes a mountain. A simple conversation feels like a battle. A new opportunity starts to look like a trap. Fear exaggerates what's ahead because it wants to keep you where you are. It tries to protect you by limiting you, but all it really does is shrink the life you were meant to step into. Most people don't fail because they aren't capable. They stumble because fear convinces them they can't handle what's coming. Fear pulls moments from the past and projects them onto the future. It reminds you of the one time things didn't work out and says, see, it will happen again. But that voice is not truth. It's a recording of doubt that plays on loop, hoping you'll mistake it for reality. When you meet a new challenge, fear doesn't show you the strength you've gained. It only shows you the risk. It never shows the growth, the breakthrough, or the blessing on the other side. If you could step outside of your fear for a moment and look at the situation clearly, you would realize most of the things you were scared of never actually happened. The things that did happen weren't as heavy as you imagined. That's how fear works. It makes the unknown look dangerous. It makes discomfort look deadly. It magnifies everything until you feel too small to move. But the truth is, fear's power is rooted in distortion, not reality. The moment you take even one small step forward, the illusion starts to fade. The mountain becomes a hill. The hill becomes a step. What once felt impossible becomes manageable. Fear exaggerates to keep you from discovering how strong you really are. It wants you to focus on your limits instead of your potential. It wants you to trust your doubts more than your gifts. But when you pause, breathe, and face what's in front of you with clear eyes, you'll notice that the future is never as big or as threatening as fear makes it seem. The challenge ahead is usually smaller than the fear inside. And once you understand that, fear loses the ability to hold you back. Fear grows louder and stronger when you stand still. The longer you hesitate, the more time fear has to build its story. It fills the silence with doubts. It turns your pause into pressure. When you delay action, your mind starts rehearsing every possible outcome, and fear takes advantage of that space. What begins as a small concern becomes a heavy weight because you've given fear room to stretch, twist, and multiply. Standing still doesn't protect you. It quietly feeds the very thing you're trying to avoid. Think about the times you knew what you needed to do but waited. Maybe you needed to make a call, start a task, take a step, or speak up. In the beginning, it was simple, manageable, but the moment you said, I'll do it later, fear found its way in. Hours pass, then days, and suddenly the task feels bigger than it ever was. You can feel fear tightening its grip, not because the situation changed, but because your hesitation allowed the emotion to settle inside you. Fear thrives in delay. It grows in moments when your heart wants to move, but your feet stay planted. Movement, even small movement, weakens fear's influence. When you take a step, your mind has less space to create stories. Action pulls you out of your head and into reality. You begin to see things for what they are instead of what fear told you they might be. But when you freeze, Fear fills that empty space with noise. It tells you you're not ready. It tells you you're alone. It tells you you might fail. And because you're not moving, you start believing it. The stillness becomes a trap, not a resting place. Fear doesn't need truth to grow. It only needs time. Every moment you stall, fear adds another layer, another reason to back away. But the moment you choose to move, something shifts. Your confidence rises. Your breath evens out. You feel a sense of control returning. You see that the challenge wasn't as heavy as your mind made it. You realize fear was feeding on your silence, not your situation. Standing still gives fear permission to lead your life. Moving forward reminds fear it doesn't define you. Even a small step disrupts the cycle. One decision, one action, one moment of courage. Fear grows when you stay still, but it shrinks the moment you choose to move. Courage has never been about living without fear. It has always been about moving even when fear is present. People often think courage feels like confidence, strength, or certainty, but it rarely starts that way. Most of the time, courage begins with a shaky voice, a racing heart, and a decision to act anyway. Fear may sit on your shoulder, whisper in your ear, or try to hold your steps, but courage speaks louder through action. The moment you move, even with fear inside you, you break its control. When you look at someone who seems brave, you might assume they don't feel fear, but they do. They've simply learned that fear doesn't get the final say. Courage is what you choose when your knees tremble, but you step forward. It's the strength that rises when everything in you wants to run back to safety. It's the quiet thought that says, I can try, even when doubt argues the opposite. You don't need fear to disappear before you move. You need to move so fear loses its influence. Fear often tricks you into believing you need perfect conditions before you take action. It tells you to wait until you're calm, certain, or fully prepared. But courage knows that waiting for those feelings keeps you stuck. If you wait for fear to leave, you might never take the step that changes your life. Courage is choosing progress over comfort. It's understanding that fear is a normal part of growth and not a signal to stop. Every meaningful step you take in life will invite fear, but every courageous step you take weakens its grip. When you act through fear, something powerful happens inside you. You build trust in yourself. You start recognizing that fear can rise, but it cannot destroy you. Each time you choose action, you gather evidence that you're stronger than the emotion trying to hold you back. Your confidence grows, not because fear disappears, but because you've proven to yourself that you can move with it, not just without it. People who live boldly aren't fearless. They're familiar with fear, but they don't surrender to it. They allow it to exist without letting it lead. Courage is the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. It carries you forward even when your voice shakes or your steps feel unsteady. Choosing action in the presence of fear is what shapes you into someone stronger, wiser, and more grounded than you were before. Fear may be loud, but courage is what moves you forward. Fear often shows up where meaning lies. You don't fear things that don't matter. You fear the things that touch your purpose, your heart, and your future. When something feels important, your mind becomes more sensitive to the thought of losing it, failing at it, or being judged for it. That sensitivity creates fear, not because you are weak, but because the moment carries value. Fear is a sign that you're standing near something that matters to your growth. Instead of seeing fear as a warning to run, you can see it as a signal that you are close to something significant. Think about the moments that make your heart beat faster. Starting a new job, sharing an idea, stepping into responsibility, opening up emotionally, or taking a new step in life. These situations feel heavy because they carry weight. If it didn't matter to you, you wouldn't feel anything. Fear reveals meaning by showing you where your deepest desires live. The areas of your life that scare you the most often point toward the areas where you have the most potential. Fear is not attacking you. It's highlighting the places where growth is possible. Sometimes fear rises when you're about to step into something that stretches you. Stretching is uncomfortable, but it's also how you grow. The fear you feel in moments like that isn't a sign that you shouldn't move forward. It's a sign that what you're stepping into has the power to change you. When you understand that fear is connected to significance, you start to see it differently. You stop taking it as a reason to stop and begin taking it as a reminder that you're heading in the right direction. Fear also reveals what you care about protecting. You fear losing your peace because peace matters to you. You fear disappointing people because relationships matter to you. You fear stepping into new roles because you want to succeed. Fear rises where the heart is invested. Instead of letting it close you off, you can use it to better understand yourself. Fear becomes a mirror reflecting your priorities, values, and dreams. When fear shows up, you can ask yourself why this moment feels important. Often the answer will lead you straight to your purpose. Fear is not the enemy. It's information. It points toward the areas that hold meaning. It shows you what you're willing to fight for, grow for, and rise for. When you see fear in that light, you no longer run from it. You learn from it. Fear takes shape through the lens you use to look at your life. Two people can face the same situation, but feel completely different about it because perspective shapes the experience. When your mind focuses on what might go wrong, fear grows. When your mind looks for what can be learned or gained, fear weakens. The event itself doesn't change. What changes is the meaning you attach to it. Your perspective can turn a challenge into a threat or into an opportunity. It can make a moment feel overwhelming or manageable. Fear often feels powerful because your thoughts give it permission to be. When you face something uncertain, your mind tries to fill in the gaps. If those gaps are filled with doubt, fear becomes louder. You start imagining outcomes that haven't happened. You predict failure before you even begin. Your perspective begins to tilt toward danger, even when there isn't any real danger in front of you. But when you choose to shift the way you see the situation, fear starts losing its grip. Instead of focusing on everything that could fall apart, you begin noticing the parts that could work, the growth that could happen, and the strength you might discover along the way. Changing your perspective doesn't mean pretending fear isn't there. It means looking at the same moment with clearer eyes. It means allowing yourself to see the reality instead of the exaggerated version fear wants to show you. When you step back and look again, you often realize the situation is not as big or as threatening as your mind made it. Fear likes to distort the picture, but perspective brings it back into focus. Your perspective is one of the few things you have full control over. You can't always control what comes your way, but you can control how you interpret it. When you shift your focus toward possibility, resilience, and growth, fear loses much of its influence. You start seeing challenges as stepping stones rather than barriers. You begin to understand that what felt frightening was really a test of how you were looking at the moment, not a sign that you were incapable of handling it. Fear feeds on a narrow viewpoint. It needs you to focus on one angle, usually the darkest one. But when you widen your perspective, you give yourself room to breathe. You start to see options, choices, and paths you couldn't see before. Perspective is the light that reveals the truth behind the fear. When you adjust how you look at things, the things you fear begin to shift too. Every time you move forward in the presence of fear, you're building a strength inside you that can't be developed any other way. Walking through fear is not about proving something to others. It's about proving something to yourself. It shows you that fear may shake you, but it cannot stop you. Each step you take becomes evidence that you're capable of handling more than you once believed. Confidence doesn't appear before the challenge. It grows as you move through it one brave moment at a time. When you look back on the moments that changed you, you'll notice they didn't happen in comfort. They happened when you pushed past hesitation. They happened when you were scared but moved anyway. Those steps didn't just move you forward in life. They expanded your mindset. They showed you that fear was louder than it was accurate. You learned that your heart could race, your voice could tremble, and you could still do what needed to be done. That reminder becomes a quiet strength you can draw from in every new season. Walking through fear teaches you resilience. It builds a kind of inner calm because once you survive what you thought might break you, the next challenge doesn't feel as intimidating. You start recognizing familiar patterns. You feel fear rise, but instead of letting it freeze you, you acknowledge it and keep moving. You've walked through fear before, and you know you can do it again. This creates a confidence that isn't loud or showy. It's grounded, steady, and earned through experience. Facing fear also teaches you more about who you are. You notice strengths you didn't realize you had. You discover patience, courage, and clarity that only show up under pressure. When you walk through fear, you're not just changing your circumstances. You're changing your identity. You're becoming someone who trusts themselves, someone who doesn't let emotion decide their future, someone who knows their potential is bigger than their doubt. The more you walk through fear, the less control it has over you. Fear may still appear, but it no longer defines your decisions. It becomes a signal, not a barrier. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what can I become on the other side of this? That shift is powerful. It transforms how you approach every new opportunity. Fear doesn't disappear by waiting. It shrinks when you move. Every step forward builds confidence, and that confidence becomes the foundation for a stronger, braver version of you.